experience will blow your mind.
Or just leave you thinking, what the hell are they talking about?
Hi, I'm Slider. I'm host of the M Cluster, and we're here for our Sunday night discussion. This week's movie is going to be The Three Musketeers. And since Brandon selected this movie, we're going to go ahead and let him lead us into the discussion.
Hi, guys. I'm Brandon, as you know. I hope you've enjoyed our discussions in the past. Today we'll be discussing The Three Musketeers. I picked this movie for probably the same reason I saw it. When I first heard about it, I heard it had an airship. That is the main reason why I watched the movie. Outside of that, I found the fights in the movie to be fun, to say the least. And overall, I would say I enjoyed the movie. So we're going to actually hand it off to Tyrone and see how he feels.
Hey, how's it going? When I watched this movie, I didn't feel the same enthusiasm that that Brandon had about the airship. It didn't feel new. The movie itself didn't feel like, it just didn't feel like the ride that I was expecting. I mean, you know, it's a pretty decently made film, except for some small errors. But you know, if you haven't seen much cinema and you go in and watch this movie, you'll have a good time, you know. But I just didn't find anything new in it, nothing that stuck with me or anything like that. Slider?
All right. So this movie had me feeling a very wide array of emotions, and I didn't feel that I could adequately put them out off the cuff. So I've actually prepared something about how I feel about this movie. And this is a work of Paul W.S. Anderson. And for those of you who are unaware and haven't seen the background video, Paul Anderson is the creative person behind the Resident Evil series and Alien vs. Predator and Death Race. All huge box office smashes, slash sarcasm. And okay, so instead of starting by bashing the movie, let's focus on the positive. Let's show you my favorite part of the movie. Okay, that would be the credits, because that told me that the movie ended, and I didn't have to watch it anymore. That being said, there were some nice things about this film. They actually had some very nice scenes. It was well produced. It was well made. He is not known for slacking when it comes to the visual aspects of the movie. So there's lots of nice wide scenes. You know, like this aerial scene was pretty nice. And then, you know, of course, we had boobies, right? And he had some pretty nice interior locations. I mean, if you look at the ceiling there, it's all gold and painted, and you've got the long shot with the guard standing there. I mean, that's a really nice shot, right? We also had boobies, right? And these vistas, you know, these wide-angle vistas, I really enjoyed that. I think he has a knack for these vistas. I mean, this is almost like something out of a painting that you would see. So you know, that's another positive thing about the movie. And of course, it had boobies, right? And you know, it's always nice to look at boobies. And then, you know, we had some more boobies, and after that, we had some more boobies. So there was a theme, I thought, that was constant throughout the film. That, you know, he kept the theory or the theme of, you know, boobies, which, you know, it's always good to show consistency. as Brandon mentioned, there was a lot of action in the movie, and some of the swordplay wasn't bad. I think when they went into too much of the effects of the swordplay, like they did a lot of the slow motion shots like they did in the 300, that it took away from the romantic feeling of the whole idea of swordplay. And that took away from it for me, but other than that, the action scenes were quite good. Then it started to get a little ridiculous. You see, she's running around doing things. Here, obviously she likes balls on the face, which is something that I thought was pretty interesting. And here we got some Matrix action going on where she's jumping up and down, and they slow down the shot, and she's spinning, and there's wires that are edited out in post-production. So, that was something that I had a little bit of a problem with. And then apparently the Porthos character, who is known for being a fan of brutish tactics, apparently was infused with gamma radiation. Because in this particular iteration of the Three Musketeers, he's pulling chains out of walls, concrete, and all. And then he uses those chains as weapons to defeat the 18 bajillion people that he's fighting. And that just didn't feel realistic at all. It was the choreographing was not horrible, but it just, you could see that they were taking their turns, waiting for one person to fall, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, and then you've got Aramis. Aramis is the religious person of the Three Musketeers. He was actually a priest, but he describes himself, he was a priest in the past, and he left the order. He described himself as a man of God, but not a man of the cloth. So we have to have the requisite sexual innuendo for the religious guy. That was a very formulaic type thing that they did there. And but then you have shots like this. Now you see, I walk into an experience like this, I walk into it and I'm like, hey, that might be the Three Musketeers. And that makes sense, right? That makes no sense. So, I'm like, what am I watching here? Is this the Golden Compass? Is this, am I watching anime? I don't understand. Right? I was like, oh, look at this, another shot that right out of the Three Musketeers. I can see, you got the guys in the costumes and the hats and horses, and all makes a lot of sense, right? This makes no sense. And we have this airship. It's, the only thing it's missing is the hum from the Enterprise, and some of the displays and the dashboards and whatnot. We got the elaborate costumes, but it is 17th century, and I know I made the mistake of calling it the 16th century in the video. Bite me. So we got the costumes, and you got Mila Jovovich showing off her legs. And keep in mind, Mila Jovovich is Paul Anderson's wife. So we know she's sleeping with the director, which is probably how she got the part. Again, this makes no sense. If you were in 17th century France and you saw this, you'd probably shit your pants and go, it's the end of the world. And then the airship. The one thing that Brandon pointed out that he really enjoyed about, or the reason he saw the movie, they beat you to death with the airship. Okay, so very early on in the movie, we get this shot here where they show you, hey, look at that, we're going to build an airship. Hey, look at that, we built airships. Oh my God, look at our airships. And then they just stopped caring. It was really difficult to, I got somebody getting some feedback on me here. So it was very difficult to take the movie seriously. When you've got the heroes in the foreground, they're...
Well, I think part of the thing is you always go in expecting, I would say...
What, the Three Musketeers?
You go in expecting everything to be exact.
No, not exact, just true to the story. None of this is true to the story. And
well, that's not necessarily true. I mean, there were Three Musketeers.
There were actually four.
D'Artagnan. Well, okay, D'Artagnan is not. Well,
an entire corps of Musketeers, if you want to get technical about it. But the story is about those three. But you continue.
Well, I'm just saying, I mean, those characters are still in the the movie. They are still Musketeers.
Okay. Okay, so let me finish.
You didn't enjoy any of the fighting?
Let me finish making my points here, and then I'll get to that. Okay, so you've got the hero and the love interest making out in front of the airship that is on fire. The guards are standing in the background, just kind of looking at the two lovers. Oh, it's so nice. The king and queen are off to the side. Meanwhile, there are munitions and gunpowder barrels just exploding on the ship. No one seems to care. And think about this. Okay, so the wet chick, that would be Mila Jovovich, was thrown out at what one must figure is about 5,000 feet into the ocean, and she survived. Okay, that was just ridiculous. I mean, no explanation, no rhyme, no reason, just.
She used her dress as a parachute.
I see. Okay. And then, Paul Anderson just stole scenes from other movies.
Those two scenes don't look anything alike.
Well, that's because they're not playing in the video. But this is the scene where Morpheus / D'Artagnan runs through the barrage of fire and leaps out of the tall building onto the awaiting aircraft while things are exploding around them. Okay. We have another Matrix shot when she's running through the tunnel, and there's the projectile shooting at her on both directions, and she's waving her arms, Neo-like, right? And what was interesting about that particular shot was the fact that they also stole that from Indiana Jones. Not the waving of the arms part, but the actual running down the tunnel while projectiles are shooting through because of the pressure plates in the floor. So, yeah, there was a lot about this I did not like. So, am I going to say I didn't like any of it? No, because that would not be true. Because I did. It's still, on some level, Three Musketeer-esque.
And I think that was the point. What was to bring the Three Musketeers, or at least somewhat of the Three Musketeers story, to the younger generation that doesn't really know about it.
Yes, but by changing the story in that way, they diminish it. This is about honor and about friendship and about loyalty, not about technology, which is what an airship is. And I understand you're a fan of steampunk. I have no problem with steampunk. If they would have called this movie something else, I would have liked it a whole lot more than I did. But again, they called it the Three Musketeers. And when they don't deliver that core, the essence of the story, that I have a problem with that.
What would you have called it, and what story would it have been?
There's any number of fantasy genre, steampunk-esque books out there that, I mean, who knows? I wouldn't know what to name it. You could call it a flight in Paris, in honor of the king, the King's Guard. There's any number of crazy things you could have called this movie and made it. It would have made me expect.
What if we add parentheses, or parentheses at the end, and just say parallel universe?
If you would explain that somehow, that would have worked. To say that this is, just to call it straight up the Three Musketeers, I think is actually disrespectful to the author. As you know, there are other movies that I feel that way about.
I really hope we get to that one soon.
But I mean, the production value of the movie was good, but I mean, let's face it, the movie did not do well. It was not well received. I think it made a third of its production budget in the box office. It had a $75 million production budget, and it earned $25 million.
Resident Evil is a good example of a movie that had a decently sized budget but didn't do very well, but still there's sequels. There's a 5th and 6th being made.
That's because they have a cult following. similar to in the other movies we've discussed, like Serenity. Serenity was not a moneymaker by any stretch of the imagination on television, and it got made into a film. You want to talk about that was carried by the video game. That was not working on the merits of the film itself.
How do you guys feel about the casting?
Well, as Slider pointed out, there apparently is 2 roles that Orlando Bloom plays.
Yeah, it was a bit of a Orlando Bloom lookalike there for Artemis. But
Aramis.
other than that, Aramis.
Yeah, Artemis is a female. She's she's a god in mythology.
Don't really care. They didn't have one French accent in the whole movie. I'm trying to contain myself.
A French accent is not needed.
And when they looked at a map of the English Tower, it was written in like New Times Roman, not in any sort of handwriting. It was clearly in like computer print, which it was not really. I mean, for a person that picked Three Musketeers, I don't think you should pick out flaws and simple naming changes. But anyways, Artemis, whatever. Orlando Bloom, doesn't matter. How about D'Artagnan? How'd you feel about them casting, Justin Bieber, Zac Efron, Robert Pattinson lookalike? I mean, he was more feminine than the actual king, which was kind of weird.
That's going a little far.
I mean, they dressed up a girl with his hat and cloak only, put him on a horse, and rode off, and all of the guards were confused and believed that was him, and chased the girl through Paris. I'm sorry, they can't dress up. If you dress up, a girl in Slider's clothes, no one's gonna be fooled at all. If you dress up a girl in your clothes, Brandon, no one's gonna be fooled at all. But this, 5'3", blonde hair down to her crack, was totally fooled. Just a whole legion of guards, a whole corps of guards, just abandoning their posts because they thought it was D'Artagnan.
Well, you also have to remember they have plot armor, where a person probably would not actually believe what happened there. They have plot armor. Of course, it has to work. It has to go through the flow of the movie.
Okay, well, that makes sense. Still, she was really an attractive woman, and the guards believed it was D'Artagnan. But I get what you're saying. Now, one of the issues that I had with a lot of the acting or the actors is, one of the things we mentioned was the accent. Okay, fine. They don't need a French accent, but they should all have the same damn accent, not this wide array of accents. They're all from France except maybe 1 or 2 characters that were there from England.
Yeah.
So it was inexplicable why all these people would have all these different accents. Now, the costuming was actually quite good. I thought it fit the period. It was all flamboyant and elaborate, kind of like the French court was, and there were some interesting things about the interactions between the king and the Orlando Bloom's character. I can't remember his name right now. Buckingham.
Yeah.
Where they talked about fashion. And the king was always trying to make sure he was up to date with what was being worn in London, and he was always behind. So that was an interesting little gag that they had going on. But just again, the feel of it, they were trying too hard. I understand where you're coming from about introducing this to a new generation, but they were trying too hard to incorporate these elements that just aren't part of the story. They don't feel authentic or realistic even. And that, I think, is part of what detracted it from, detracted from the enjoyment aspect of it for me. When you talk about the, yes, I am a purist when it comes to story. If I see something called The Three Musketeers, I want to see The Three Musketeers. And maybe someone who is younger might have a very different feeling on this movie than I did. But just for me, had I never read The Three Musketeers, again, I wouldn't have disliked this as much. It's kind of one of the downfalls of being a reader is when you do read these things, it's very difficult to translate what one has a personal experience in their own mind onto a big screen for everybody to enjoy.
All right, well, so outside of it not being, quote-unquote, The Three Musketeers, did you find anything, actually in the movie, not the credits, in the movie, enjoyable? I mean, did you enjoy any of the fighting? Did you enjoy seeing the airship battle, anything?
Well, the airship battle, because no one, you don't have to be an engineer or a scientist or even intelligent to understand that, hey, that thing's hanging under a balloon. If I pop the balloon, it will fall. But no, they attacked the hull of the ship. It's like, hey, let's try to sink it. That's not. Maybe they didn't understand how air works, or they took fluid dynamics just a little too far. But they didn't understand how what buoyancy was. Okay, I can go with all that. But while pretty, it was unrealistic. Eventually they got to the point where they were doing the swashbuckling thing, and they jump onto the balloon with the knife and they slide down, which Mythbuster shows would hurt you. But that's neither here nor there. It was just the fight didn't seem realistic. That fight would have been over much quicker by anyone who had any sort of military or militant training, any type of combat training. It doesn't take a lot to understand that, hey, that thing's floating, it cut that and it sinks or falls or whatever you want to call it.
Even in the days of the pirates, they did go after the sails. I mean, that's one of the quickest ways to disable a ship is to knock on their sails. The hull was really one of the last things pirates attacked, because they didn't have a steady stream of ammunition, and to tear down the sails, they would load those cannons up with forks, knives, and whatever they had handy, and shoot the sails. I'm not sure why they didn't just hit the big balloon that's a bigger target than the actual ship.
But to go further on Brandon's question, I did enjoy the swordplay when they left the special effects out of it.
So you mean like the fight in the courtyard?
The fight in the courtyard was good, except for, when they jump up in the air and then slow everything down. That wasn't necessary. It was forced. It was unnatural. Some classic type of fighting that was going on was when he grabbed the rope that was on the pendulum with the counterweight on the other side and swung it around to hit people. That was all very fun and very nice to watch. Had I been watching The Matrix, those scenes where they used the special effects wouldn't have bothered me. But again, this is supposed to be, 17th century France. And that just
sure, it's not 16th century.
No, actually, I'm not. But that's a discussion for another time.
Well, like I said, I enjoyed some aspects to it. The story was weak. I will give you that. The story was pretty weak. But I usually, when I go into a movie, regardless of what it's called, I try to wipe out any notions I had of what the story should be, and just try to sit down and enjoy the movie for what it is, as opposed to what it should be.
Okay, so if Marvel had made this exact movie and called it The Avengers, would you have a problem with it? That's a yes.
You would have to insert the characters, at least, from the Avengers into it.
Okay, so if the Three Musketeers were dressed up as Hawkeye, Black Widow, and the Hulk.
Well, I mean, we did see a guy ripping chains out of walls. We had air battles. Could work.
Well, too bad they were dressed up as a ninja, Batman, and Hercules. So they already had their little superhero fantasy parts.
Now, I will say this about Paul W. Anderson. He does know how to introduce characters. While the scene that Tyrone talking about was a little over the top, the whole diving scene, because they never did explain how he breathed underwater. You know, he just kind of showed up. When they actually named the character, you know, the way they framed it, you know, like they kind of almost made it like a poster where they faded the colors out a little bit. They added the name. There was a border on one side. That was very 17th century. Like when you look at an Old West film, if they were to introduce a character and then, you know, name them by putting them on a wanted poster kind of thing, you know, I thought that was interesting. But along that same notion, one of the things that they left out was they didn't really clarify how the Musketeers had fallen. You know, the king or the Cardinal's Guard was the main force throughout the city, and the Musketeers were sort of like an after effect, and they didn't explain how that happened. And I think the way they put it, you're supposed to believe that the Cardinal is the real power and the king is sort of a token figure, but then that really, really detracts from the greatness of the Musketeers and what they are and why they are what they are. And I'm not trying to convince you to come around to my way of thinking. You know, it's just how I feel about that.
So you would have preferred it if it were more of a, well, if it were more of a prequel to this, before the airships, before D'Artagnan, how the Musketeers fell.
No,
or
not
just a better written
necessarily.
story.
If they simply would have explained why the Musketeers were the way they were. You know, why was Porthos so cynical? You know, why did Aramis feel like he lost faith? You know, why did Athos, you know, just lose his belief in everything? You know,
well, they showed why Athos lost his belief in everything.
Well, no, they showed why he lost his belief, why he was depressed because of a woman. You know, they did show us that. They didn't show us why he lost his faith in the crown, in just, you know, in honor. You know, when D'Artagnan asks him what he believes in, he says, I believe in alcohol, in fighting, and in, I think that was it. He's like, I believe in this. He flips up a coin and stabs it with his knife. I believe in this, and he takes a drink. I forget what the third thing was. But, you know, something had to happen to them to make them that way, and we just didn't get that. I mean, not even a mention of it.
Yeah, I mean, I could see wanting some more background information on what happened to them, especially given other movies that have shown a lot of different things with the Three Musketeers.
So, Tyrone, I feel like we're leaving you out of this conversation. Do you have anything else to add to this?
No, it's fine. I was just glad when the credits started. Well, I do like to say maybe the diving scene. Maybe he just like used like a snorkel mask or something like that.
Yeah, but
like
they didn't show it. You know, so
or
had he dumped some equipment when he got out of the water or something, anything to indicate that he had some kind of equipment would have been better.
Yeah, that part just led me all confused for no reason.
Brandon?
There's not a whole lot I can add. I mean, like I said, I gave you the point where the story was weak. I enjoyed the airship and I enjoyed the swordplay. Especially me being a steampunk fan, that enhanced, to the airship. I also like almost anything related, or not really related, any good swordplay, whether it's has special effects thrown in or not.
Okay, I'll give you that. I mean, everyone has their preference, and if they would have made a movie. Okay, I'm going to talk about Doctor Who for a second. There was an episode of Doctor Who where they were in Victorian England, and there's a very steampunk-ish story background where they used this giant robot, and there was this, it was steam-driven, and it had weapons, and they showed the technology, and, I know it's Doctor Who, it's a very different genre, but if that were a movie and not Doctor Who, I still would have enjoyed that because it was a constant story. They didn't try to mix the elements, and they didn't name it after something else, and try to make it fit. What would have been interesting would have been had this story been about 3 different Musketeers in their time. I think that might have worked. Or even hell, kind of like they do for the Lord of the Rings, where they read you in an introduction, of where you're at and what the universe is like. Any of those aspects would have made this movie better. But Paul Anderson is just bad at making well-rounded movies, in my opinion. I think I do enjoy his. I didn't hate the first Resident Evil. But I could not stomach the rest of them. I mean, it was the same thing over and over and over. And kind of like I said in my videos, his work is best suited for people that can turn down the sound, play some music, because what's actually going on other than the action on the screen simply isn't important, in my opinion.
I tend to disagree. I actually like the Resident Evil series. I thought it was that part of what he's done with the Resident Evil series was well made. The shots are always good. The action's always nice. It's a zombie movie based on a video game.
Clones.
Yeah, clones are fine. Whatever. I mean, I'm not too into clones, but everything else was pretty
special powers.
Pretty well done. And as far as Alien vs. Predator, I thought that was pretty well done. Mashups are kind of hard to do, and
I'll give you that. Alien vs. Predator, the first one was alright.
Yeah,
the second one was crap.
I didn't even watch the second one, but the first one was pretty good. I'm actually looking forward to the new Resident Evil once that comes out. I'll probably see that.
Yeah, and there's a 6th being made.
Yeah, and but I think this director, he was out of his element. He wanted to make another action film, whereas, Three Musketeers, yes, it's an action film. It's an action story, but there's a lot more to it than just, swashbuckling and swinging swords around.
Yeah, the key word is story. The action is part of the story. It's not a story for the sake of action.
I still enjoyed the action aspects of the movie.
Yeah. Go ahead, Taro.
No, I'm ready to pick the next movie and wish everyone a happy Father's Day.
Oh yes, that's right. I forgot to mention that it is Father's Day, so happy Father's Day to all the dads out there.
And call your dad and make sure you tell him Happy Father's Day if you still have his number.
All right.
And tell them to watch this movie.
Don't. No. All right. If there's nothing else to add, let's go ahead and get our next movie selected. And for that, we have Dante. Dante, you would?
For the record, I'm wearing purple and black, not just black. Just saying. I'm going to have a black Sunday here.
And this is 46, G46. And G46 correlates to...
Come on.
Tyrone, you finally get one of your movies.
Limitless.
Limitless.
Oh, yes.
It's also one of mine.
Yeah.
So
you're just a poser then, apparently.
we should take mine out of the mix.
Well, yes, that's how it works. So we're looking. That's not a bad choice. It looks like I'm going to enjoy discussing that one. But
Bradley Cooper, Robert De Niro, really good cast.
Yeah, so we're going to go ahead and wrap this episode up, and hope you enjoyed it. Obviously, there were some varying opinions on this film. I'm not going to say. No, I'm going to say don't watch it. I was going to try to be fair to it, but no, it's just not something I would advise. Now, Brandon obviously feels different than I do, and that's fine.
You realize that people watching this, just hearing us argue about it, are going to go see it to see what they think.
Well, if you do that, download it.
I would say rent it from or stream it, or if you're really sadistic, buy it and then leave it over someone's house you don't like, so they get caught with it. All in all, it was still a better love story than Twilight.
Yes, that was an observation that was pointed out to me, and I have to agree there. On that note, we're going to go ahead and wrap this one up. So, Brandon?
Thank you guys for joining us. I hope you enjoyed the discussion. Please go ahead and make your own opinion of the movie and send us an email or comment on our page on what you thought of it yourself.
Mike, Taro?
That's about it. It came in second place, like a number 2 in my book, but just not first place material.
Okay. Well, if I had to, rate this on a 1 to 10 scale, there's not a number large enough that I could, say in the time we have remaining. So, on that note, remember, we are the M Cluster. You can reach us at google.com or Google Plus at the M Cluster. We're on Twitter. We're the M Cluster. We are on Facebook. You search for us as the M Cluster. You can send us emails, the mcluster@gmail.com. We've got a phone number you can give us a call at. When you go on the page, you can find that. You can send questions in. You can make suggestions. You can give us your opinions. Any way you want to reach out to us is fine with us. We're always looking for more interaction. And on that note, we're going to go ahead and close this out. So good night, happy Father's Day, and that's a wrap.
Limitless is a story of what a man can do when there are no limits on the amount of brain power he has access to. Meet Eddie Mora. His story opens with a listless writer wondering how he has gotten himself into the predicament he is in. Standing on a ledge, thugs about to break into his apartment and kill him. He takes us to the beginning of his story, where he describes himself by saying, "What kind of guy without a drug or alcohol problem looks this way? A writer." The story is that of a man with unfulfilled potential, and that potential is about to be unleashed when he is introduced to a little clear pill by a former and disreputable acquaintance. He goes from listless and unmotivated to sharp, focused, and driven in a matter of mere moments. In addition to his newly found impetus, he has access to information and memories from everything he has seen or read or ever been exposed to. Information that was stored in his brain, but he did not have access to before. Suddenly, his book is written, his life is organized, he is learning languages, and assimilating and processing information from all walks of life. He realizes he could use this to his advantage and begins working in the world of finance. His meteoric rise in the financial world catches the attention of corporate giants and the criminal underworld alike. All is going well, but as with anything that is too good to be true, problems arise. The drug has side effects which hinder him from his new activities, and one of those side effects seems to be death. Oh yeah, and his supply is limited when his supplier, well, dies. We follow Eddie as he winds his way through a maze of corporations, mobsters, law enforcement, and the occasional bout of existential dysplasia in which hours of his life just disappear. Ultimately, Eddie realizes that he's going to have to find his way off the pill, but that is one solution that his newly enhanced brain power can't seem to serve up. Limitless is a well-made, well-acted, and much welcomed film showing that there still may be some creativity left in Hollywood after all. The film uses narration by the lead character mixed with wonderfully intelligent cinematography to engage the audience in a thrilling adventure of one man's quest to have it all. Bradley Cooper does a wonderful job in his portrayal of Eddie Mora, and with a supporting cast of Abby Cornish, Anna Friel, and film giant Robert De Niro, Limitless makes for an original and entertaining look at how far one man will go. And now, it's time for another episode of Ask Dante. This week, Tough Girl asks, how many licks does it take to get to the center of a Tootsie Roll Tootsie Pop?
Dear Tough Girl. First, I believe the question was supposed to be, how many licks does it take to get to the Tootsie Roll center of a Tootsie Pop? I don't think anybody cares about making to this stick. It just so happened, when I was in my high school, my calculus teacher actually had us answer this very question. The first problem arises from the very nature of the question. Does anybody actually lick a Tootsie Pop? No. People put it in their mouths and leave it there. But for experimentation's sake, we did it anyway. Our fairly young female teacher demonstrated that we needed to come up with a standard repeatable lick, even if it wasn't a real lick. She then proceeded to put the pop in her mouth, twirl it around before taking it out again. I imagine nearly every male student got a chubby right about then. So what we did was measure the Tootsie Pop with calipers, lick it a certain number of times, and remeasure to determine the rate the candy shrinks. After a few data points, we continued without measuring until we reached the Tootsie Pop center, so we could find out what the size of the sphere was and do math to see how many licks it would have been had we continuously measured. It turns out the Tootsie Pop is always misshapen, so if you actually did a real lick, it would depend on your particular pop and where you were licking. After all those years, I can't remember the number, so I'm just going to have to go with Mr. Owl's answer and say 3.